Hello and welcome everybody to the webinar. So let's get started. A few people might still join, but we have a lot of exciting and great content to cover today. So let's wait no longer. So with that, I'd like to introduce and welcome Bob Cornelissen, 9-time Microsoft MVP for the session as well. So Bob, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody.
Wonderful, great. So my name is Christian Heitkamp. I'm Director of Products at Nice IT Management Solution, and I'm hosting together with Bob this webinar today. And we'll talk about all the challenges we meet in the field about SCOM gateways and talk about the best practices, how to work with them. So let's have a look at the agenda here, which we have prepared for you. So Bob and I sat together and thought about different scenarios, what would be interesting to talk about. And obviously we do like a little introduction if you haven't heard about SCOM gateways before. So we'll give a bit of a high-level overview, why you need them, why they're used, and talk about different use cases. And later we run through an install, how do you deploy them in various scenarios. Then obviously you always need high availability. So we'll talk about that as well. And what would be a webinar without common issues, right? So everybody who worked with gateways had experienced problems either with certificates or with communication or connectivity. So we'll also dive into that area. And then last but not least, we talk about migrations. So I think everybody has that today on the agenda with so many new SCOM releases in the last years. And now also I heard that there's another one coming next year. So we are in migrations basically all the time, and what we need to take care when we talk about migrations and gateways. And last as well, we have a Q&A section, but with that, I also want to mention that Q&A, you can always use the chat and the Q&A functions of this webinar, and more than welcome to enter your questions as well there. All right, with that, I think that's about the agenda. And let me give Bob a first take on his introduction and talk about what he does. And Bob, yeah, let us know what you're up to.
Perfect. So just for those who don't know me yet, my name is Bob Cornelissen. I also go by the name SCOM Bob. So that says a little bit about what I do. A lot these years. I'm now a 9-time Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center. I was just renewed on the 1st of July. I'm a managing consultant, technical director at TopQore, and I love playing billiards. And I'm very heavily involved in a Dutch charity called House of Tales with a dog shelter in Thailand. Now, to say a little bit more about TopQore, one of the organizers. So this is where I work, and this is almost what we look like. We are an international team of IT enthusiasts in the Netherlands and abroad. We work everywhere worldwide. Especially what I want to point out is we do a lot of SCOM. So a lot of SCOM, upgrading, training. We do health checks, implementations, maintenance as a service, all kinds of things around SCOM. We blog. We are a regular speaker at international events, but also local user groups. And of course, we host webinars such as this. So Christian, how about you?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, well, I'm not SCOM Chris. That would be kind of new, right? But well, I'm also working since many years, like over 10 years with SCOM. So going back to, well, SCOM, well, 2007 R2 was really the starting point, and building management packs and architecting solutions over the last year or so, and overlook basically the portfolio of the products we sell from NICE, and I'll talk a bit in a moment about just a few sentences. So we do, as general in the monitoring business, before I came to SCOM, I worked with for Hewlett Packard on the OpenView portfolio, another monitoring suite as well. So basically doing that all time long. And yeah, with that, I think I can give a quick overview of what solution actually we at NICE do, just to give a small glimpse on that. And obviously, feel free to use your web browser and browse to www.nice.de and our corporate web page to have a look at what we offer in depth from solution perspective. So there's a lot around databases, so that's where I also come from. I'm also a certified database administrator. So in the beginning, I was like working a lot on DB2, so it was one of the first management packs, and later Oracle and others came to that. And well, today we're in a cloud world, right? And we'll do also monitoring products for Office 365, Microsoft 365. It's branded now, so, and also integrate now with Azure Monitor and the like. So that's a bit the space where we work in. So just recently we moved a bit with some solutions away from SCOM, but also now using Azure Monitor as endpoint to integrate the data, the metric data we collect. So just want to give this overview here. If there's anything you like on that, our team would be more than happy to talk about the solutions. Just drop us a mail or just write something in the chat, so can go into depth with that. But all for that for now, because we've got a lot to cover. So yeah, I just
saw you were going to add MongoDB.
Yes, nice. That's the latest add-on to the family. It's not really there yet, but wait a few weeks and all done. So that's yeah, it's a full in development right now. So we've got the first customers for that, so who really requested that. So it seems to be picking up in the market.
Okay. First of all, we actually want to ask you, how many gateways do you use right now? Very interesting, actually. So
it's good because yeah, like up to 10, you see.
I'm very happy to have you all on board then. So let's see what we can do next. So let's get back into the agenda then. So first of all, I will be talking about the why for a SCOM gateway. So for that, I first need to explain a little bit about the SCOM base architecture. I will keep it very, very short. So this is the view of that. So on the left-hand side, first of all, we have SCOM agents, and in this webinar with SCOM agents, I still mean the Windows agents. The other ones will be called out separately. The Windows agents talk to the management servers, and the management servers store their configuration and their data in the SQL databases. That's the standard way. Now, next to that, on the right-hand side, we also see the other way of having the Windows agents connect to a gateway, and then the gateway will communicate to the management servers, back up to the databases. So this is the shortest way of saying what the infrastructure will look like. And we will actually be talking about a lot of different possibilities, and we will have some videos around that as well. So stay tuned for that. So first of all, what are gateways used for? So what we see a lot is gateways being used for agents in untrusted domains. Now, with untrusted domains, what do I mean with that? First of all, if we look back at the picture that we just saw, the management servers, they are sitting in one of the domains, right? They are sitting in an Active Directory domain. They trust each other based on Kerberos authentication. So any agent sitting in the same Kerberos realm, so forest, Active Directory forest, will be trusted. Anything outside of that in other domains, maybe in DMZs or in other customers, or maybe if you are migrating between an old domain and a new one, might be in an untrusted domain. So this is what we mean with it. And we can use a gateway for that by putting a gateway inside of that domain, or as in this example, put it inside of a DMZ and have that one communicate with the agents or with network devices sitting in the DMZ, and then communicate back to the inside. Right, the next one, agents in faraway locations. I call it far away, but usually it's because of slow lines, You have to tunnel some data. You have to spread the data load a little bit, or they might lose connection. So in this way, you can also assign some site codes to a site behind the gateway. I will explain that later. And there's also a reason which we hear a lot is limiting the open firewall ports in secure networks. So if you're talking to the network team and you say, I want to monitor all of the machines in a secure DMZ, and you tell them you want to open port 5723 from all of those machines to the SCOM service in the backend, then usually you get some frowns, and they would sometimes prefer to have one gateway machine sitting there, so they only need to allow one gateway machine to communicate with the inside world. The next reason is having to create less certificates for the untrusted or separated domains on sites. So what I talked about in the beginning, if you have a Kerberos trust within the same Active Directory forest, and then you don't need this. However, for anything else, there's only one other authentication mechanism, and that is certificates. So if you happen to have, let's say, 100 agents in a different domain, you might need to create then 100 certificates to have them communicate with your inside management servers. Or you have to create one certificate for the gateway, and then the gateway can talk to all of those agents. So this makes it a lot easier. And another one which we see a lot is if you are a hosting provider. So either you are hosting the management as a service or the monitoring as a service centrally, and you are monitoring servers across a VPN line into your customers. So this is what we see a lot as well. And of course, these are untrusted domains, and sometimes name resolution would also be a problem for those machines to find your SCOM environment in any case. And with a gateway, of course, that makes it a lot easier because you can force that with a host file, for instance. Christian?
Yeah, I just want to say especially the last one we also see, because we work a lot with service providers, and exactly the use case you described is really interesting for as if you communicate over the untrusted, like internet network, so to say. You still want to have a secure endpoint. That's the way to go.
Okay, so let me show you this again in a simple picture first, before getting into the more complicated pictures. So again, at the top, we have the database and the management server. We have the SCOM agents, which are the Windows agents talking to it in the same site. And the management server is monitoring either network devices or Linux, Unix devices there. And at the bottom, behind the firewall, we have another site or a location or a DMZ. And we have some SCOM agents in there as well. And we have network devices or Linux devices there. And we can use a gateway in order to provide the monitoring for the network devices and to provide a point of contact for the SCOM agents. So these SCOM agents actually think this is a management server because, well, it's quite transparent that way. So it acts as if it is a management server, only it doesn't have the same functions. So again, why gateways? We have a little bit more. It's a simple solution to only use a single certificate. Of course, you do need to have a certificate then as well on the management servers, but not in, let's say, that other domain or the other site. You only need to have a certificate for the gateway in that case. And you have to open up a single firewall port only for that machine. Another advantage is the tunneling of SCOM data traffic. So what it actually does is it does compress the data slightly, and it also does bandwidth throttling. So this means that if you have, let's say, 10 agents and they are sending data all at the same time, let's say every minute, and maybe they are all sending it at the same 2 seconds, then you will see spikes in the line. And what this gateway will do is it will actually cache this data and send it in smaller chunks across the line in a regular pattern. So maybe every few seconds it sends up some data to the management service. So this has a lower impact on your line if you have very slow lines. Also, what is important is if you are changing a management pack, if you are loading a management pack into your environment, what SCOM will do is it will send out this new management pack to all of the agents. And if these are large management packs and you have a lot of agents in a lot of locations, this will actually put a short strain on your lines, especially if you have slower lines, or maybe you have satellite links or something like that, which are expensive for this kind of traffic. What you can do is you can put a gateway on the other side, because then the management server will send it only to the gateway across the line, and then the gateway will send it to the agent sitting in its same location. And the other one is caching and collecting of data while the site link goes offline. So if you have a remote site and you lose your connection, it will actually cache the data coming from the agents. The agents themselves, the Windows agents, will also cache it. However, Linux and network monitoring would not exist if you are monitoring them across the line. And if you are doing it through a local gateway, then the gateway will actually keep on monitoring and collecting the data. And then once the line comes back online, it will send the data over the line back to the SCOM management group. Of course, you will have had a number of alerts already that there's something missing on the other side of the line, but you get all of the let's say real alerts and performance data and those kind of things later. So you can still report on them and see what's happening. Right, so this is a nice empty slide. So I've been working on some Visios. So this is coming from a larger Visio, which you will see at the end of the picture. But let's start the story here. I will build it up as we go along. So in this picture, you will see a few management servers and a set of databases behind it. In the same location, there are some Windows agents reporting to it, and the management servers are in a resource pool, as indicated by the blue area. And together, they monitor network and Linux devices through the resource pool. This is what we always do if we are monitoring network and Linux resources. It's all based on resource pool of machines, and then they will work together to monitor the resources. Now, in the second picture, you can see the same management servers and the resource pool can also monitor devices in another location, in another site. So for the Windows agents, these would be in the same Active Directory forest, although it is possible to also monitor untrusted Windows servers through a certificate authentication. And of course, in the same way, you can see the management servers in the central site monitoring network and Linux devices in the other site, in the remote location. As long as the line is good enough, then this will not be a problem. Now, in the third picture, we add another location. And this could also be like a customer location, maybe in a hosted SCOM scenario. Now, in this location, we do have a SCOM gateway and a few Windows agents. So this is a scenario we see a lot, so that we just have a number of Windows agents sitting in a remote location. For some reason, we have chosen the gateway in this case. And the Windows agents, they communicate with the gateway, and the gateway has a connection up to the management servers in the central location. So keep in mind that the Windows agents still think they are talking to a management server, and they do not see the difference here. All right, let's move on to the next scenario. So in this scenario, we are still in one site, in one location, and we add a few gateways to the central site. So in this case, we are using the gateways to monitor network and Linux servers in this location. So we have to place these gateways in a resource pool for this, as you see in the blue area in the middle. The Windows agents, they also communicate to the gateways here. And as always, the gateways then send their data back to the management servers. Now, if you note that because the management servers are not monitoring network or Linux in this picture, we left the resource pool out here. Of course, there will be a number of resource pools between those management servers in the management group, but we will ignore them for now because they have more to do with SCOM internal things and not with the network and Linux monitoring there. Now, we can also extend this picture again, just like we just did with a remote location with the management server. Also, a gateway and the resource pool with gateways can be used to monitor the remote location. Right, let's move on. So now we are introducing another remote site. And this site also has a gateway. So there are Windows agents talking to it. Also, because there are some network devices in there, we are creating a resource pool in this remote location for them to, for actually this one gateway to monitor the network and Linux resources if they are there. So notice in this picture that the gateways are chained. This means that there are several levels of gateways communicating in a chain back up to the management servers. So this is also a possibility. So let's add another remote site, which is slightly bigger. Because we want to have the resource pool monitoring network and Linux agents to be highly available, we now have 3 gateways. And they also sit together in a resource pool to monitor their network and Linux resources. Also, we can set the Windows agents to talk to one of the gateways, and then maybe use another gateway as a failover in case of this gateway going down. We will show this later on. And if we put all of this together, then we get this picture. So this is just a collection of all of the scenarios that we have shown so far in Visio drawings. Let's move on. So I want to just show you one of my customer examples. This is one where at the right-hand side, at the right top side, you will see a SCOM management group. And this SCOM management group is actually sitting in the Azure cloud. So it's sitting over there in a network. And that there are also a lot of other machines sitting there, the Windows machines, and they are talking directly to the management servers. Now, on the left top side, there's also a centralized data center location, which is a big site. And we placed a number of gateways there. We put 2 sets of gateways, and this is because 2 of the gateways, in this case, are in another domain than all of the others. So there's also a domain migration going on at the same time. So you will see SCOM agents at the top, Windows agents from both domains. One set is talking to the gateways in its own domain, and the other set is talking to the gateways in the other domain. And together we put them in a resource pool so we can monitor network and Linux Unix devices as well. Now on the left bottom side, we see also distant locations. These are locations all over the world with, a rack of servers, and there's some network devices there. There's some Windows devices there, and the gateways are monitoring them remotely. So there's the centralized gateways are monitoring them remotely, and the Windows agents, they are just chatting to the gateways in their own domain in the central location. Now in the middle bottom, we will see mobile locations. We actually had over 25 of them. I just put 25 plus there. So they needed to have network monitoring. They had regular connection losses because they were very mobile, let's say. And this is the reason why we put the gateway in there. So we could actually cache the data, keep the data flowing, keep the monitoring of network devices going. And once the line came back up, we could use the chained gateway scenario to move everything up to the central data center side to the gateway sitting over there. Now, at that time, the network topology was this way, that everything needed to go through the central site. And at some point this changed because of modern possibilities of the Azure cloud. And we could actually move some of these machines or some of these locations to talk directly to the management service in the cloud. So this is just one example where we have some complexity there, chained gateways and a lot of distant locations, but also some of the reasons why you would use a gateway directly in the picture already. So now the question is, why would you not use SCOM gateways? Because there are also some reasons for that. Well, one of them is more administrative effort on the SCOM infrastructure. Because you are adding gateways, it means, of course, you are adding additional machines. You need to keep them up to date with Windows updates, with SCOM updates. You need to keep them healthy because, they are monitoring stuff behind it. And if the gateway goes down, then, part of the monitoring goes down in this case. So you need to keep them healthy, and you need to think about backup, antivirus, and whatever else happens around this. Also, it's a single point of failure. So if you have, let's say, 5 Windows agents, you might as well just, give them all a certificate and have them communicate directly. Because if this one gateway goes down, then all 5 agents cannot send their data up through the chain into your SCOM environment. So there is a point where you say, well, this is beneficial or this is not beneficial. Still, it is a single point of failure. However, you can make them high available. That's all very good, but making gateways highly available means you are adding even more machines, so more administrative effort. Well, and this, of course, is clear that you need an additional VM somewhere or multiple VMs, or that you need to add this gateway function to one of the existing machines. So I've been at a customer where we added this to the backup server because it wasn't doing anything all day and only working through the night. So this was a working situation for us where we did not need to add an additional machine. Although the gateway functionality, especially when monitoring network and Linux resources, is heavier than a normal agent. So these are some reasons why you would use gateways or maybe not use gateways. It is always a choice of effort and cost against the advantages, of course, of having them. Right, so back to the agenda. Installing gateways. Of course, if we decide that we want to have a gateway, then we still need to install them. So let's talk about the process of installing a SCOM gateway. First of all, and this is one of the most regular problems, is make sure that you don't have a regular SCOM agent installed on this machine. Usually where places where we come, we see automated Windows VM deployments, and they contain everything, including backup, antivirus, SCOM agent, SCCM agent, and whatever is needed. But that does mean that there is a SCOM agent installed on this machine once you roll it out, and it is also known in the SCOM environment as a machine. It's been discovered. So you need to clean this. You need to remove the SCOM agent from the gateway and then clean it out of the existing SCOM environment by removing it as a machine and then waiting for a little bit for it to be cleaned out. Also, you need to make sure that name resolving works in both directions. So your gateway will have a fully qualified domain name and your management server will have one as well. And you need to be able to name resolve them both ways. So if you do a ping in both directions, the ping doesn't need to arrive, but at least you need to make sure that it can name resolve. If it cannot name resolve, because maybe it's a customer location and you don't want to connect the DNS namespaces, then you can use a host file. Next, you run the gateway approval tool on a management server. You do this first. So first you run the gateway approval tool. This actually makes the machine known as a management server / gateway in the system, in the SCOM infrastructure, and then it knows that it is awaiting for you to install a machine, a gateway. Next, you make sure that you create and import certificates on the Windows side. So you need to have a certificate on the management servers, only once. So if they are valid, they are there, that's good. And you have to have a certificate for the gateway machine. We will talk a little bit more about that later. After you have those certificates, then you install the SCOM gateway from the SCOM installation wizard for the gateway. And you import the certificate using momcert import. So this is just a small tool which actually loads the certificate from which you have already loaded on a Windows side, loads it into the gateway software, so into the agent to be used. And of course, you need to make sure that the firewall ports and the routing are open so that you can actually communicate between the gateway and the management server. So Christian, can you talk to me a little bit about cross-platform monitoring gateway installation?
Yes, for sure. So thanks, Bob, for the initial introduction already. So, and you mentioned already a couple of times the cross-platform components like Linux or as well AIX, which is the second largest we see. They're all referred to a resource pool. So you always want to keep in mind resource pool belongs to Linux. So because the monitoring actually in this case is triggered by the resource pool. So the Linux agents is passive, so it's just sitting there and not doing anything until it's triggered by the resource pool. So, and when you include a gateway, and in this case we have, for example, the gateway behind, the Linux agent behind the gateway, then this is really important when it comes to high availability, because if the gateway is down, then even no workflows will run. That also means no caching in this case. So when setting it up, when the installation comes here, so yes, thanks for bringing up this point, the certificate needs to be signed with the management server and imported to the managed server and vice versa, because you actually will, this communication between the agent and the gateway is using certificate-based authentication and communication. So, so you will need to do that with the gateway as well. And then the next step, obviously, you have the firewall ports, which are important to open. So these need to be opened between the gateway system and the Linux system. So these are the standard ports you know already. So for SSH, logging, and SFTP is the one, and the other one is for the agent communication to the gateway system. Again, you don't need to open those between the gateway and your management service, your management group, so to say. And then yeah, so you create resource pools, including the gateways, to use the monitoring targets. So you actually create a resource pool on a management server, or you have it already, and then you make the gateway part of it as well. So and then the targets become monitoring. And yeah, at this point, thanks for putting it in here. Bob, this is really about security, and there are different run as accounts. If you're setting up Linux, there are typically the action account, the privilege account, and the maintenance account run as profiles. And you can equip these profiles with at least 2 different run as accounts. So, and you can also use one super user account, which is typically not recommended, but at least 2 user. One is elevated with sudo, and the other one, the action account, is not elevated. So, and then in the last step, obviously also distribute them to the gateway. So if you just set them, it won't work. You need to make sure that you distribute those profiles to the gateway as well, including the accounts. So,
because the gateway is going to monitor those machines, and it needs to have those credentials, otherwise it cannot monitor.
Exactly, that's how it is. Otherwise you get an error, and then you're going to go figure, right, to see what the problem is, because it's a bit hidden, or typically it reminds you to distribute the account, But if you typically use a more secure option, then you define it. If you use less secure, they will automatically distribute it. But very few customers actually do that, because then also the accounts will end up on any other system as well.
Yeah, you don't want to have a Linux generic root-enabled account sitting on every machine on your network.
Yeah,
it's only
exactly.
gateways.
Exactly. Okay, we have network. That's your part. Think you can talk about network, or shall I?
Sure, I can talk about it. So we have, of course, 3 forms of monitoring. We talked about the Windows agent monitoring, and now we talk about the Linux side of things just now. And there's, of course, a third part, which is the network monitoring, usually using SNMP or ICMP. So we have, of course, the same kind of setup, but there are also some things to consider here. If you are monitoring through SNMP or ICMP, then you need to adjust your firewall as well to enable communication between the gateway and the device. Of course, also on the device itself, you might have access lists which deny you connection if you on SNMP if you don't set those. So of course on the devices you need to set something as well. But especially the firewall in the middle between those devices might also stop you. Also, again, for network monitoring, you need a resource pool. So you create a resource pool, you add the gateway to it, and then, of course, also in case of SNMP, those are also credentials again, right? You will have SNMP run as accounts, and they also need to be distributed to the gateway, because otherwise they simply won't work. They cannot use it. So those are some specifics looking at cross-platform monitoring and some network monitoring. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about a trick which is very little known actually for those using gateways. I do hope some of you know this trick. It has been there since I think SCOM 2007 RTM. And a little bit earlier as well. What we use this for is for remote sites or separate customers to tag all of the SCOM data going through a gateway with a separate field, and that field is site name. So there will be a site code attached to every piece of data coming through it. So we can actually see, okay, this server is sending data, and it has an additional parameter, initial value called site name with some kind of a code there. So you could call it customer 1 or customer 2, customer 3, and then you can create groups of these. So you can say, I want all of the machines with site name customer 1. You can put them in a group. You can also target reports at those. You can use it for notifications. I want to see all alerts coming from this or that class with site name, etc. You can create views with it. You can assign rights to it, especially if you're like a hosted entry, hosted SCOM. And as far as I know, you can only do this, add this site name to a gateway when you first run the gateway approval tool for this machine. So I have not seen anybody do it afterwards. I'm not sure if it's possible, or maybe it's an entry somewhere. It's got to be somewhere. But as far as I know, it's just when you run the gateway approval tool when installing this machine, this gateway, then you can add this. So the command you will see below. So the Microsoft Enterprise Management Gateway Approval Tool, you can find it in the SCOM installation media in the support tools directory somewhere. It will be there. You can copy it over to a management server. You can run it with these additional options. So of course you need to assign the gateway and management to a management server where it needs to talk to. And it has the name of the gateway there. and then you specify, this is an optional, the site name. Well, most people don't do it because they don't know if that it exists. And of course, the action create is of course because you are creating a new gateway there. Otherwise, it would be a delete if you're removing it. Right, so what else do we have? Let me quickly look at the question side. What's the port used in the network monitoring? So those are the SNMP things. So it's not the same as a port, as a protocol. So it's going to be, what is it, 6061? We know, something like that. And ping as well. It's defined as ICMP. So any gateway or any firewall you use, it will have already SNMP and ICMP defined as a protocol. So you can add it directly like that. So let's get back to this high availability. So just split this up in a few pieces, right? So let's have a look at the Windows agents on the right-hand side. So those two over there at the right top side. We assign them to one specific gateway every time. So the same goes for if you connect them to a management server, you assign them to one machine only. However, we need to tell them to use a second gateway as a failover in case they lose connection to their primary gateway. So we can use the script for that. We will show it in a minute. Next, we will have the gateways, the 3 gateways sitting in the middle. They will also only talk to a single management server on the left-hand side. You just saw the commands, you know, the gateway approval tool. It specifies one gateway and one management server to talk to each other. We can make this connection more resilient by using a script to assign them to a failover management server as well. So this is when you see, you know, these crosses happening, these arrows pointing to at least 2 management servers from each gateway. Now, the third component here of using high availability with gateways is the resource pool in blue in the middle. So we have 3 gateways. They are all part of one resource pool. And you can see 3 arrows coming from the resource pool, all pointing at the network devices and Linux and Unix devices there. If one of the machines in the resource pool fails, then the other 2 gateways will actually take over the monitoring of all those devices as they are assigned to the resource pool. So they will take over and they will split the load evenly as much as they can in monitoring. So also keep that in mind, by the way, if you have an access list on your network device or a Linux server, that all 3 gateways can connect to your device in order to try and monitor it because they belong together. So I just said, if you want to connect a gateway to multiple management servers, there's a cutout of the picture there. You can do it like this. So this is an example taken from Kevin Holman's blog. So the first line actually says $gateway, get management server with the name of the gateway, because every gateway is seen as a management server as well as being a gateway. So you get the gateway first. Next, you get the management server with the name SCOM1, and you assign it to be the primary server for your gateway. And then the last step is where you get the failover management server, being SCOM2 in this case, and you assign it to the gateway server as a failover server. So these are simple scripts, but you just need to find them and know them because they will not do it by themselves. So you really need to tell the gateway to talk to a secondary management server. Otherwise, it will not do it. The next point is you having multiple gateways for one agent. So what we do here is we get, well, this actually gets SCOM1 and SCOM2, but it doesn't matter. So you can point one agent towards multiple gateways or to multiple management servers, it's the same story. You get the name of both of the gateways, in this case, SCOM1 and SCOM2, and then you get your agent with some kind of a name, server.opsmanager.net, and you assign it the primary server and the failover server. So more examples of these, and also to have a loop for multiple agents, so you can just go through the script for all applicable service agents in one go. You can go to Kevin Holman's site through that link over there, and you can find it. Otherwise, a simple query will find it easy enough. Let me look at the questions ports just quickly.
Yes, Bob, I saw there's some added one on the port, and if I understand correctly, there's I read the question is ICMP port not necessary for Windows agent monitoring, question mark?
Yeah, so actually he also answers the question a little bit. So what usually happens is a Windows agent talks to a management server. And in this case, they don't know, they will talk to a gateway, right? As soon as that agent goes offline for some reason, or maybe the machine is down or the agent is down on the machine, then your SCOM infrastructure will tell you, I am missing heartbeats from this Windows agent. And it will generate an alert for that. And the next thing it will try and do, and this is the only reason why it will try and connect in the other direction, is it will send a ping to that SCOM agent from the closest management server. So in this case, it will be the gateway. So it will send a ping back towards that machine. So in that case, you have two options. Either you enable, your management servers and gateways to ping SCOM agents, or you just keep it turned off, as I've seen in multiple customers. However, then you get a second alert that it cannot reach the heartbeat. It did not get the heartbeat, and it can also not reach the agent. But that might be, of course, because there's a firewall in between. So yes, I would advise to open up ping in the other direction as well to avoid this. So at least you can see, hey, my SCOM agent is not sending anything. Maybe the agent is down, but your machine is still up. So this might be valuable information to have. All right, let's continue. Running multiple gateways. So we just talked about what the gateways are used for. And of course, we talked a little bit about having multiple gateways. And one of the reasons why we might want them is for resource pools. And what we are using resource pools for is usually cross-plat monitoring, which means Linux, Unix, or network monitoring, and in some cases also website synthetic monitoring. This is because you can assign a resource pool for that one as well and distribute the run as accounts which you need for the synthetic monitoring to those machines as well. So what is important to know about a resource pool is that, of course, if the resource pool is monitoring it, it will need to be up. So if a resource pool consists out of 1 or 2 or 3 gateways, you want it to be up. So talking about resource pool high availability then, first of all, one gateway is not a high available solution, right? Because if it goes down, then the resource pool is down, it's not monitoring, it's just not there. This is quite clear. However, 2 gateways in a resource pool is not highly available. Why is this the case? Because we heard that 2 management servers, they are highly available for the resource pools. Well, there's a reason for that. The reason is basically the database. So all of the management servers together, they have a vote. And if more than 50% of the management servers is up, the resource pool belonging to them is up as well. Now, if you have exactly 50% going down, then you do not have more than 50% being up. However, with the management service, you have the database vote, which counts as maybe something small like 0.0001, which makes it, one management server with the database being up is 50.0001, is more than 50%, so the resource pool is online. With a gateway, there's no additional vote. So if you have two gateways and one of them goes down, then you have exactly 50% being up. So the resource pool goes down. And your monitoring of Linux machines, network machines also goes down in that case. So keep that in mind. If you are using, however, 3 gateways or 5, 7 or more, we do consider that as a high available solution. So 4 also might be possible. However, keep in mind that if exactly 2 goes down, then again, you are back at 50% exactly, and then that means the resource pool goes down as well. I'm guessing above 5, then basically you will not have this issue very much. Just keep in mind that you always, in this case, keep more than 50% online because there's no additional vote. Just for Windows agents, there is no real resource pools there. Then it's just being a gateway, being a management server, just sitting there waiting for a connection. So for just Windows agents, 2 gateways can be considered highly available. Because if one goes down, then the Windows agents can send their data up to the second gateway and it will work. So, Christian,
yes,
can
sure.
you tell us a little bit about some special cases? I will bring up the first one.
Yes, multi-homing. Yeah, I think you mentioned it already, and I think this is also very important together in the topic of migration currently, where you do a side-by-side migration, or what I've been seeing if you have, for example, a very important application running on a Windows server, and you need to develop a management pack for that. You have a development environment, you have a production environment, or like a staging environment, so to say, and you would like to test your management pack, and you have 2 management groups. One is a staging and one is your development environment. So you want to basically use that important server from both environments, from both management groups. So you can basically place or have that specific agent, this Windows agent, talk to both management groups. In this case, we talk about multi-homing. There can be, you can multi-home it in more than 2, I think up to 5 management groups. For Windows, this is typically not a problem. It's 4, actually 4. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So you can up to 4 multi-home it in 4 different, for Windows at least. For Linux, it's a bit different. So I mentioned this in a moment, but this is the idea of multi-homing this the agent, and as well when you migrate, then later you take it out. Typically, that's only for over a limited period of time. So yeah, so if we talk about Linux, I think we have one more bullet for Linux to talk about a bit. So just remember that that's typically temporarily only, because it places a lot of more load actually on the Linux agent, because it's basically pulled or triggered from 2 resource pools, from 2 different resource pools. And when you do that, remember to first copy the certificates to both management server, to those management groups over, and obviously to all the servers there that are part of the resource pool, or where the resource pool is responsible for managing those Linux systems. So otherwise that won't work. So there's a little caveat we ran into with some customers, or we experienced this ourselves. If you use multi-homing and you use log file monitoring, like imagine like you have a log file rule that monitors a Linux log file, like system log, for example. The rule starts from one management group, processes it, and moves the pointer. And then the other one comes and moves the pointer again. So you're basically missing alerts on either of the management groups. So it's not really supporting, it's not supporting multi-homing in this case. So there are workarounds, obviously you could do that, like creating your own script-based monitors with 2 pointers, but with the standard log file monitoring module, the SCX log file reader, which is called like this is the binary on a Linux system that actually does that. It does not support that. So,
you can use one of the management groups to do that monitoring and then turn that those monitors off on the other side, right?
Yeah, right. Well, you don't have multi-homing with that. So
right.
For the providers that are part of it, it works like CPU monitoring, memory monitoring, disk and all that. That's fine. So that works fine. So you could only work around that if you basically do a script-based log file monitoring and have your own pointer management in there. So but in any case, it means more performance impact. Basically, double all the performance. The workflows run twice. So and then especially if you embed like scripts in your monitors, like in your Linux custom monitors, because they'll always be deployed to the Linux systems or AX systems and then executed. So that takes a lot more resource also on the network side because they are pushed over there. So, and from a gateway perspective, it doesn't really change because it's just like talking to a specific gateway belonging to a management group. So that is similar like as it's without gateways basically. So yeah, that's all from special cases here now, Bob, I think. So
no, it's you. So let's have a chat about some common issues then.
Sure. So, I know there are a lot of issues. Let's see. Connectivity. I see here. Yeah. So I think that's what I have often experienced when customer come and complain, or we see a problem that the connectivity between the actual management server and the gateway is a problem. So for example, a firewall port was closed or it was reconfigured, a network route is down. So because there's so many devices in between, that is typically a challenge. So that's what we see. And the troubleshooting typically gives you the tools you can use for network troubleshooting, like ping and trace route and so on. And you can just try to find out where the connectivity breaks. So we see that also from our other products, like where we have outbound communication to the internet, where we monitor web services or invoke cloud-based APIs, for example. They all go out, and there's so many devices in between which security controls, and that's probably the most reason for this, because security does not like to have any holes in their firewall for going through, but obviously it's required. So, and then they're just person comes and just closes them. So eventually. Yeah, the next one is name resolution. I think that was already covered a bit. Like if you're familiar with the host file and you know how to edit it and how to work, just make NSLOOKUP. That's what I typically use, or ping, as you said, just to see the FQDN. And you should make sure that a FQDN resolves and not only the simple host name without FQDN. Because if on one side it resolves to FQDN and the other not, that also might cause for a problem. And then in the next steps, actually, the certificates, and I think the first step and the name of this is very frequent. I see that this is a problem. Also, if something changes in the domain names or the name architecture, then you obviously want to consider that this needs to be changed as well. But certificates generate with a wrong name, like not FQDN or just with FQDN, obviously call the problem. And then we have the expiry somewhere there, I guess, as well. So you probably know certificates expire. And what's actually the best way to catch that, Bob? Take a little question there. How do you know? How get you an alert if I want to have an alert before my certificates expire?
Well, you actually have a PKI management pack out there, which is a community pack. It's written by Raphael Burry, and we are actually helping him maintain that management pack currently as well. So that will actually, it's very important because we actually seen this happen. Not, of course, when you install a new gateway and you request a new certificate, then the expiry date will be okay. But after some time, or maybe the management server which had a certificate once might have expired on the other side. But what is also very important in this case is, of course, the name, and it has to come from a trusted certificate authority. So if you're using an internal PKI, your management server will likely trust that certificate. However, having a gateway in a remote location or in a DMZ or wherever, that one might not trust the certificate you are issuing from your CA. So you must make sure that your CA root certificates, you know, that the chain is important as well in that gateway server or whatever you are monitoring.
Yeah, you have different certificate types as well. You want to pay attention that you pick the correct type for that as well. And you have one more bullet, I think, here.
Yeah, so this is I want to mention here that lately, and the last few years, the certificates went from SHA-1 certificates to SHA-2 certificates. They need to be long enough. In the old days, you know, SCOM 2007 or whatever, we used the 512 key length, and that one no longer is applicable. Also, you must make sure that the certificate is of the right type. So client-server certificates, both OIDs are needed there.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk a bit about that, because probably most don't touch that actually, because they just simply use the discovery wizard. And if you do use the discovery wizard, it just will run through and do the work for you. But in case you have to manually install the agent, actually, you also eventually are lucky to be able to sign the certificate automatically with the discovery wizard afterwards. But in many cases, actually, you're required to sign certificate on the command line. So you would basically copy it over from the management server to you, from the agent to your management server. Use the certificate sign tool, which was mentioned earlier, and then basically copy it back to the Linux AIX system, Unix system, and bring it back up there. So, and I see that quite frequently, and I think I wrote once an article on TechNet about it. So there's some details on there how to do that. But obviously, you want to be familiar with SCP and some tools to bring files to the Linux system and back. And also that would see when that is manually done, then often the name actually is put in wrong. Instead of the FQ, then just the regular name is in there, and then obviously that the managing the agent, like onboarding into the management group, actually fails in that step. So and there are a couple of, I could talk probably a bit about troubleshooting that, but I think you're already over time, Bob. Is that true? So we probably hurry it up, and there's some questions as well.
We will move on for the moment. We will answer questions in a bit. So other common issues. So the resource pool. So if you install a gateway, we've talked about this before. Often it is forgotten to add it to the correct resource pool, especially if you already have one and you are just adding another gateway to it, or just another machine to the same pool. You need to add it to the resource pool as well, and you need to make sure that your run as account distribution is either going to the resource pool or to the gateway. Another common issue is when you are discovering new Linux systems which are behind the gateway and you are not selecting the gateway as the discovery server. Likely only the gateway has connectivity using SSH to that Linux server through the firewalls. So you need to make sure that once you run the discovery wizard, that you select the gateway as the discovery server for that Linux system. What we see a lot is this: the gateway installation procedure not being clean. We already mentioned a few of these. I will mention this one again. Already agent installed. This happens this happens a lot when we are troubleshooting customers. Also, not first running the gateway approval tool. You first need to run the gateway approval tool before installing the gateway software. And of course, either a forgotten certificate or assigning the wrong one. I've seen a management server certificate being loaded on a gateway, or the gateway certificate being loaded on a management server. Those kind of things happen, and each, of course, has their own certificate. So let's have a short chat about migrations. I've done another webinar, or a few webinars actually, about this topic in the last few months. You can find them back on our website. So I will split it up into two pieces. In-place migration. When you do an in-place migration of, let's say, SCOM 2016 to 2019, you will upgrade the management service first. And the next thing you do is check your SCX certificates. So these are used for Linux monitoring only. Please check the certificates if they are still valid, if they are still loaded, if they are okay. We've seen cases where something went wrong there, and then the SCX certificate is no longer there, or you just really need to load them again. After that, you upgrade the gateways and then the agents. So this is the easy part. Going towards the side-by-side migration, of course, this is a little bit more difficult. So first you install the management service, so new management service. And next you get your SCX certificates exported from those new management servers and import them in all of the other new management servers. However, if you want to move on to the Linux side of things and multi-home them temporarily, you need to make sure that the SCX certificates from the old environment are loaded into the new management service as well, and the other way around. Next, you import the Linux and Unix management packs, which you need, and you can start adding new gateways. Again, make sure the SCX certificates are on those as well. You deploy the resource pools, you add the run as accounts, and deploy them to the resource pools so the gateways get them. And next, you start deploying the Linux agents from the new management group, which might be through a gateway or through the management service. Really doesn't matter in this case. This will upgrade the agent in place and multi-home it at that moment. As long as the SCX certificate from the old environment is loaded into the new one, it will be trusted. And otherwise, it will try and re-sign that certificate with a new one. And then you will see that the old environment does not trust this machine anymore. So importing and exporting these SCX certificates between the environments is very important. Next, you have those run as accounts deployed towards the resource pools and with the gateways in there. Next, you need to assign them to the management packs because you are starting over. And for the Windows agents, they can be multi-homed by a push install or by Kevin Holman's agent pack. All right, so I was just seeing some questions. We can do that at later because we only have a few more slides, so please hang on. So this actually brings us to the end of the SCOM Gateway specific part of the presentation. So let's just quickly talk about these kind of things before we open up the Q&A. Bear with us, please. So for us, the next webinar to come, we already planned it and announced it from today, is SCOM Reporting Essentials. We will do a full hour on that one as well on the 20th of August at 4 p.m. CET, which is the Amsterdam time zone. Please go to topcore.com/webinars to find past and future webinars, also to find later on the recording of this one, by the way. Also, which is not included in this screen, is we are currently working on a PDF booklet about SCOM reporting, which contains all of the blog posts I've done earlier and a little bit more, and to bring everything together, and you can download that later. Now, I heard from Christian that NICE is also planning to do an Azure Monitor webinar somewhere right after the summer.
Yes, that's also in planning, so no date yet. So, but as we go through summer, this will be announced as well.
Okay, perfect. Also, we are still planning to do an Azure Security Center Basics webinar. Any other suggestions of topics we should cover, please add them in the chat or just email them to contact@topcore.com, so we know that you have interest in some of these topics going forward.
Maybe one more. So you might have heard of SCOMathon earlier, like this quarter, so which we ran together with Squared Up. So they're actually hosting a coffee break episode as well there around SCOM security. So also you may stay tuned for that, which is coming up on July, so on 28th of July. So, SCOM and security, always a good topic as well.
All right, so I have just an additional slide here, because like I said, I'm heavily involved in a Dutch charity called House of Tales, and we are actually supporting a dog shelter in Thailand, and you can see one of the dogs over there in the picture. We have a donation page up. Just want to say that just maintaining these dogs, it costs about $15 or euros per month to feed and water them. You can see the food bowls over there. They actually, in the meantime, destroyed those food bowls already. So we bought some metal ones, and they have a little bit more trouble destroying those. So this is a good one. You can follow us on Facebook. We have some pictures and all kinds of stuff coming there. So please have a look. I'm not asking for 15 euros. Any donation, 1, 2, 3, everything is good. Anything will help out these animals, because they also have a difficult time, and due to Corona, prices have gone up as well. So let's move back into this part. Please use either the chat or the questions part to ask your questions, so we can go through them. Let me have a look. We answered that part.
There's a question about on the non-vulnerability of SHA-2 secure certificates.
Yeah, so it's SHA-2 is more secure than the SHA-1, so this is why they've been moving off of that for the last couple of years. So it's only going to be SHA-2 based. Standalone CA, it doesn't matter if it's an enterprise-based CA or a standalone CA. What is very important is that you make sure that the certificate chain is loaded in the machines which have a certificate. So the management server and the gateway in this case, or maybe if you have a remote agent you want to give a certificate to, make sure that it trusts this CA, otherwise it won't work. So yes, so the PKI management pack, I see Christian already answered that one. You can find it by simply looking at by finding PKI certificate management pack, and you will find it on GitHub currently. You can find it also on my blog. Thank you very much for attending.